Roger Corman was many things. Director, producer, distributor, to name a few, but he was undeniably a master of exploitation cinema. So in honor of his legacy, I'm going to look at some of my favorite Corman ripoffs. Since I've already spoken in great detail about movies like Galaxy of Terror, The Velvet Vampire, and Forbidden World, I'm going to look at some other Corman films I have yet to do full videos on. Here's 5 of my favorite lesser talked about Corman films. Carnosaur. In 1984, author John Brosnan, using the pseudonym Harry Adam Knight, released the novel Carnosaur. He brought it to the attention of Roger Corman in 1990, and roughly a year later, Brosnan signed a deal with Roger's wife Julie to take his novel and adapt it to film. The novel already read like a B-movie, so it was perfect for Corman. It's essentially a monster movie filled to the brim with sex and cheesy dialogue. I mean, just listen to the blurb from the back cover. The world's most vicious predator is back, and he's got company. Tyrannosaurus Rex, Deinonychus, Brachiosaurus. All have been loosed into the modern world by Jane Penward, the vengeance-hungry nymphomaniac wife of the man who cloned them. David Pascal is a small-time journalist who gets his chance to make it big by cracking the dino story. But the key to the truth carries a high price. It's held by Jane. Before she's through with David, the carnage created by the dinosaurs will spread for miles and climax in an apocalyptic battle between the primal monsters and the technological forces that modern man can muster. But can anything stand against the voracious prehistoric hunger of Carnosaur? While Corman liked it, he felt it wasn't time to make the movie just yet. Then in 1992, he caught wind of a little movie being made called Jurassic Park. Corman fast-tracked Carnosaur, and the film quickly went into production. He hired Adam Simon to write and direct. Trying to tie it to Jurassic Park, they cast Diane Ladd as the scientist. Ladd is Laura Dern's mother. The movie was loosely based on the novel. It takes the basics from the book and runs with it. The movie was about a scientist that is planning to wipe out the human race and replace them with dinosaurs. Kind of makes me think of that panel from Spider-Man. The movie is pure cheese. It's got a very threadbare plot, but it does have animatronic dinosaurs from the late great John Carl Buechler. The movie was released on May 13th, 1993. They originally planned to have it released simultaneously with Jurassic Park on June 11th, 1993, but instead decided to release it early. The reason being, it had its premiere at the new Dinosaur Park in Ogden, Utah. Then the next day, May 14th, it had a small theatrical release. Despite its small theatrical run, people were going nuts for dinosaurs at the time, and the film was a modest success. It later raked it in on home video. It was such a hit, it started a new franchise for Corman, which I'll touch on later. Strange to think the novel Carnosaur predated Jurassic Park by 6 years. It's undeniable that Jurassic Park shares many of the same plot elements as Carnosaur. So much so, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility to think that Crichton read Carnosaur and decided to do a more serious take on the same story. So in essence, Jurassic Park is the ripoff of Carnosaur. Carnosaur is not available for streaming, and it's only available on DVD. Body Chemistry. Fatal Attraction was the third highest-grossing film of 1987. While Corman had done sexploitation before, this was a chance to do something that was more cerebral. A thriller that wasn't just boobs and butts. Oh, there would still be plenty of that, but there was also a deeper story there beyond the usual. The movie's about Tom, played by Mark Singer. He's a happily married professor of human sexuality. He's researching a new project and consults with the controversial Dr. Claire Archer. Her theory is that lust is the core of the human sex drive, and proves this by seducing Tom and ruining his life. Claire then does all kinds of things to manipulate Tom and play him until he finally goes insane. So the parallel between both movies is the cheating husband and the psychopath. The director Christine Peterson previously directed the 1988 horror film Deadly Dreams. She worked with the writer to add BDSM into the script and make it more erotic than Fatal Attraction. Personally, I think this one is much more believable than Fatal Attraction. Singer does a very good job of playing the manipulated husband, and while what his character does is absolutely wrong, he doesn't deserve what happens to him. The movie was such a hit, it spawned 3 sequels. They followed Dr. Archer, each time played by a different actress. going from place to place to find a new guy to manipulate. It's an interesting series that isn't the usual late-night Cinemax fare. Years ago, on my old podcast, Retrodrome, we talked in pretty great detail about all 4 movies. On a side note, Christine Peterson directed Leonardo DiCaprio in Critters 3, which was his first movie. Body Chemistry isn't available for streaming, and it's only available on DVD. Strip Teaser. While Showgirls did not do particularly well at the box office, it was a huge news item for a while, and even inspired its own Hollywood ripoff, Striptease, which also did poorly. However, a film that did not do poorly was Strip Teaser. The movie was shot in 14 days and released on July 11th, 1995, a few months before Showgirls. It was about a blind homeless man that takes an entire strip club hostage. As the movie goes on, we find out there is more to the blind guy than we initially thought. The film recycled some footage from the director Dan Golden's other film, Naked Obsession from 1990, which also starred Maria Ford and Rick Dean. The movie has Linnea Quigley in a small, uncredited role. R.A. Mihailoff played the character Little. He was Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. I was chatting with him at last year's Sci-Fi Horror Fest in Vernon, New York. Tickets are on sale now for this year's event. Come see me there. And he was telling me the proper way to make my own potato chips. The strip club in the movie is called Zipper's Clown Palace, which apparently is based on a real club in LA called Jumbo's Clown Room. The movie is very sleazy. It's about bad things happening in a strip club in a horrible neighborhood, and it feels a bit closer to reality than something like Striptease. Showgirls was the more trashy Hollywood version of Vegas debauchery, and yes, I love it dearly. In Stripteaser, Maria Ford is genuinely good, and this helped to propel her into making a ton of low-budget sexploitation films like I Like to Play Games 2 and The Showgirl Murders. The movie also has an amazing ending. Stripteaser isn't available for streaming, and it was on DVD, but it's long out of print. Piranha. Jaws is often considered the first blockbuster. It was the highest-grossing film of 1975, pulling in over $272 million. Keep in mind, the average movie ticket price in 1975 was about $2. It was the highest-grossing film of all time, until a few years later when it was defeated by Star Wars. Big studios were doing their own knockoffs, like Orca and Alligator. Corman decided, instead of going with another large predator, to go with the vicious carnivorous fish, the piranha. The movie was about a river that became infested with genetically altered piranha, who would eat anyone or anything that goes in the water. Joe Dante was an editor for Corman, and in 1976, he co-directed his first film, Hollywood Boulevard, with Alan Arkush. Corman was impressed with his work and moved him to full director for Piranha. Future visual effects Oscar winners Phil Tippett and Chris Walas worked on the film. Tippett designed the fish, and Walas did the prosthetic body parts the piranhas would chew on. The movie was released in August of 1978, a few weeks after Jaws 2. Critical reviews were mixed, but the film did quite well. The movie did well enough that a sequel was greenlit, and ended up being the first film that James Cameron ever directed. There's a lot more to that story, which I'll talk about at another time. The movie was remade in 1995 as a made-for-TV film, and then in 2010 it got a larger budget remake. The remake then got a sequel, although the remake sequel was its own story and not a remake of Piranha 2. There were countless Jaws ripoffs, most of them involving sharks, and Spielberg said that Piranha was the best of them all. Piranha is currently on Tubi and a bunch of other streaming services. You can also pick up the beautifully restored Blu-ray from Shout Factory. Carnosaur 2. So I spoke about Carnosaur and how it was a ripoff of Jurassic Park. So you would think that Carnosaur 2 would be a ripoff of Jurassic Park 2. And that's where you're wrong. Carnosaur 2 is a ripoff of Aliens. While Carnosaur was still in production, Corman could see that it was going to be a hit, so he started discussing the sequel. Never letting good production go to waste, he informed the team to reuse the dinosaurs they made for Carnosaur in Carnosaur 2. Much like how Alien was a horror movie, and Aliens was an action movie, Carnosaur was a horror movie, And Carnosaur 2 was an action movie. It's about a mercenary team that investigates a nuclear waste facility they lost contact with. They look around and find the place has been overrun with cloned dinosaurs. The movie shares numerous plot elements with Aliens, right down to the battle between the T-Rex and the forklift at the end. Although instead of dropping it into space, the dinosaur gets dropped into an elevator shaft. They then take off in a helicopter and blow up the building or nuke it from orbit. I imagine this movie gave James Cameron a good laugh. The movie was shot in 18 days in the hopes of getting it out quickly. Originally, the film was going to be released in the fall of 1994, but some delays pushed it direct-to-video in February of 1995. Carnosaur 2 did so well, Corman greenlit the third film, Carnosaur 3: Primal Species. Primal Species didn't do so great, so they put the series on ice for a few years. Later in 2001, there was the spin-off, Raptor. Then in 2006, John Carl Buechler was given the reins, and he directed the next spin-off, The Eden Formula, which reused dinosaur footage from the first 3 films. Carnosaur 2 is not available for streaming and is only available on DVD. So there are 5 glorious films from the legendary filmmaker, Roger Corman. Well, I'm glad that Piranha's been restored. I hope the rest do too. I know Shout's been restoring many movies from his catalog, so I imagine it's just a matter of time. I'm working on a video to properly honor his legacy, but that's not something I can crank out over a week like this. So eventually you'll see a longer tribute, but not for some time. For those of you who think that Roger Corman is just a schlockmeister, you have no idea how much of an influence he had on the industry. Movie producers need to follow his example, not to make bad movies, but to understand what your audience wants to see. Also, how to keep a budget from spiraling out of control. In 1964, Roger Corman did The Intruder, the first and last film of his to have a heavy-handed message. It was also the first film of his to lose money, although it later made it all back and then some on home video. Anyway, when asked about this, Corman said, "What I learned was this. It was a subject the public didn't want to see. It was too much of a message picture. After that, I changed my style. I'm going to do films that are entertainments. And beneath the surface or subtextually, if there's a theme or statement I want to make, it'll be there. But it'll be beneath the entertainment." 60 years ago, Corman figured out that message films were fine, but you had to deliver the entertainment first and the message second. Hollywood, once again, you should be taking notes. On a side note, just recently I was on my friend Scott Weinberg's podcast, Overhated, where me, Scott, and Brian Salisbury of Junk Food Cinema spoke about some of our favorite Corman movies and our history of watching his stuff. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out. I hope you enjoy it.
If you and me get through this, I'll take you out someplace real nice. We'll go to Vegas.
I'm not sure I'm ready for a commitment.